drive. I had my head on his chest, holding his hand. To his very last breath. And that put a drive in me that where I'm at today. I mean, like, you want some motivation. You want some motivation. Your firstborn child is gone and you just felt this last breath.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up. For this story, we reached out to both Optum RX, a subsidiary of United Health Group, and CNN. Neither responded to our requests for comment. Hey, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Bil Schmidtknecht. Obviously, we've been focusing a lot on the for-profit predatory health insurance companies, and tragically, you've had to learn that the hard way. So let's talk about kind of, for the audience, the timeline of things. You got a call from your son about a year ago about being denied his asthma medication. Take us through what happened.
Yeah, so on January 10th of 2024, I got a text message from my son just saying that he was having an asthma attack. And this is something he's dealt with his whole life. It's a family thing, honestly. I have asthma, my wife has asthma, whatever. Well, he had a nebulizer machine at the house. He had a steroid medicine that he's been on for years, Advair, and he has his albuterol rescue inhaler. So he was well prepped in the past to deal with all of this. He was no stranger to knowing how to handle his medicine or his asthma. Well, I get a text message saying that he was having a malfunction with his nebulizer machine and kind of asked me what I could do. Well, I was 4 hours, there was an ice storm going on that night, so I would be about 4 hours away from him. And I just said, hey, keep trying it. I said, on the text message, or maybe if you need to, go to the hospital and just get a treatment right there. That's about last I heard. I offered to bring him a new nebulizer, which we have a backup at the house, which is mine actually, but I was going to drive it up to him, but it would take 4 hours. We're talking 10 o'clock at night now too. So either way, well, 45 minutes later, I get a phone call from him, and I could tell in his voice that he was under distress, if you want to say. He was having an asthma attack. Now, knowing Cole, knowing his asthma, knowing how to deal with asthma myself personally, it didn't raise huge alarm bells. The way he was talking, it was still complete. And I'm like, his question was, okay, I'm going to go to the hospital. What insurance do I use? And he had full 100% insurance on his own through his employer. So I just said, doesn't matter. Just go to any hospital. I said, there's one right by your house. Get there, call 911, do whatever you got to do. I don't suggest you drive. So if you have to, call an ambulance. Well, he said, my roommate is home. He'll drive me, and I knew that the hospital was closed. So that kind of gave me a little resolve. Okay, he's going. Well, long and short of it, on the car ride there, once he hit the cold weather outside, I'll say, it really triggered his asthma. According to his roommate, he started breathing really heavy. He described it as like hyperventilating. Well, on the drive to the hospital, now mind you, like I said, this on a good driving day, this would be about a 5-minute drive. Cole's passed out, according to his roommate. His roommate put his hand on his arm, felt for a pulse as he was driving to the hospital, and a couple minutes away from the hospital, he says that the pulse stopped, and his roommate continued to the hospital as fast as he could get there, got to the hospital, but upon the arrival, Cole was lifeless at that point.
And he was how old?
22 years old. 22 years old. Yeah.
And
yes.
So let me go back to when he went to, what was it, CVS, Walgreens?
Oh, he went to Walgreens pharmacy on January 10th to actually get his. I got to misspoke a little bit. January 10th was the pharmacy. January 15th was the night of the incident that I just described.
So when he went to the pharmacy, he had been getting Advair, which is pretty common for asthma, for years without a problem. And they told him what?
Well, when he had presented for his prescriptions, essentially, he was told it was like $5 for his albuterol inhaler. And unfortunately, his Advair discus was no longer covered by his insurance. And if he wanted it, It had to be $539.19. Um,
And what was this insurance at the time?
he was under his employer insurance. It was managed by UMR, which is a division of UHG, with the PBM of Optum RX.
So that's a whole lot of bureaucratic layers. In
Yeah,
English,
yeah,
that's a wing of United Healthcare.
yeah, correct. Yeah, the PBM for United Healthcare, Optum RX.
And PBM is the pharmacy benefit managers, which is a whole nother can of worms, which we'll get into. But basically, he had the sub insurance of United Healthcare, and the Advair had gone from whatever it was, like 30 something bucks.
It was like, I did some checking after the fact to verify stuff. It was $66 in 2023, and it jumped up to $539.19, which was the price I was provided by Optum RX. So that's the only reason I know that. And his roommate was there that night too, and his roommate has told me that he had saw Cole's Walgreens app or something. He showed him something. It was really unclear, but he saw a price around the $500 point. He couldn't remember the exact dollar amount. But
and for Cole, I assume, he didn't have that.
No, he was making okay money for a 22-year-old, but he lived with two roommates. They divided up the rent, the food, everything. I mean, like, it's your typical 22-year-old who works, games, has a beer at the bar, or whatever it is. I mean, he's as typical as it got. And he was living his 22-year-old dream with his roommates.
And did the pharmacist explain, why has this just shot up by $400 something?
No, and that's the thing that we don't know 100%. Walgreens won't say anything to us, but according to his roommate who was there, all of a sudden, Cole was at the counter, walked away, had one medicine in his hand, and just said, "This other one's over $500 or whatever he said to him," and couldn't. It had no explanation. It was take it or leave it from the pharmacy tech. Essentially, I know for a fact they never attempted to contact his PBM or Optum RX. That was confirmed by Optum RX to see what the next step would be or try to find a viable alternative. The long and short of it, he walked out.
And I know you've done a lot of investigating. So did you kind of find out why it had shot up?
Yeah, essentially, the Advair was removed from his formulary on a non-medical change. Like, there was no medical reason for taking the Advair off the formulary from 23, and he wasn't given any notice of the change. I mean, nothing. There was no. I've tore through all his accounts, everything. Where he got his emails. There was never any notice given to Cole that I could find, or we can find anywhere in any of his electronic documentation or from the healthcare. And and then just on a side note, I do have the same form of asthma, same medicine. We could have switched medicine. That's how close we were, father like son, we'll just say. And I never got notice either, because I had a same incident that when I went to get my Advair a month later, and when I did mine, ran into the same problem.
So obviously, I want to get back to your son.
Yeah, absolutely. I
want to make sure the audience understands, because this gets very complicated if you're not in the weeds. So Optum RX, which he had through his employer, is the pharmacy service provider for United Healthcare, correct?
Yes.
And just for dummies, what does that mean? Because there's a lot of people don't know what a PBM is. What is a pharmacy service provider, and why would Advair suddenly be taking off the formulaic, meaning this was provided?
Yeah, well, and that, like I said, that is a deep question right there too, and I think you would know that. But in simple terms, the pharmacy benefit managers of the PBMs are the middlemen. They're there to manage the prescriptions. I mean, and just take control of making sure bills get paid. If you're an employer and you have insurance and you got lots of employees, they need to have somebody to manage all the paperwork, essentially. And that's why PBMs were created in the 70s. They were the middleman who flowed paperwork, essentially. And
got it.
Yeah, and that has changed for today. Like, things have changed in that world for PBMs. But
the decision ultimately to take Advair off the formulaic, meaning we're no longer going to cover it, that would be United Health, correct?
From everything I can tell, 100%. I mean, they're not
Hmm.
offering it on that formulary anymore. And that
And
there's
there are generic alternatives that United Health or the drug maker don't want to offer.
Well, I'm not going to say the drug maker doesn't want to offer it, but I can tell you, United Health will, from what we've learned, only puts drugs on their formulary when they get rebates or extra payments to put the drug on the formulary. That's it's been factually proven with lots of investigations outside of mine, but that's the rebate game that they play. And Cole fell right into the middle of the rebate game.
And who does United Healthcare get the rebates from?
So they get the rebates from the drug manufacturers. So
Got it.
yeah, essentially, I don't know if we want to get into that right now, but the reality is to get your drug on a formulary that's going to get sold to end users like my son or anybody else out there, the PBMs will tell the drug manufacturers, here's the deal. The more you pay in rebates, the better preference or the better placement you get on the formularies. And it's a
Got it.
little more technical than that, but that's essentially what it is. You pay more money,
Right.
your drug gets put first.
So kind of like legal bribes.
Yeah, kickbacks
Yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a kickback essentially. And
Yeah. And
there's
and also to be clear, um, you mentioned that your son wasn't notified of this. I mean, there's supposed to be laws about,
yes,
notifying consumers, in this case, patients, if, your drug is no longer going to be available or the generic is no longer going to be covered. Did you, find out anything more about that, about why there was no kind of announcement or communication to him?
no. The only communication we got from our employer, who got it from the broker, who got it from the PBM, we'll say, was
My head is just
I know, I
spinning.
know, I
Yeah.
know. It's insane. Essentially, all we were told it would be seamless. It's because we just, from 23 to 24, we were told it would be seamless on the prescription benefits, and that was a verbal question that was asked just in general by me and many people at our company as we started 24. But we were told, don't worry about the prescription benefits; they'll be seamless. So
Unbelievable.
that's the only thing if you want to call any notice, and they were wrong. I mean, that's
And I know you've done a lot of investigation.
yeah, yeah.
You've been to Capitol Hill. Was there something to do with the patent running
Well,
out? Because obviously, insurance companies, they and the drug makers, they want their drugs to be patented so that generics can't be offered. Was Advair? Did it have a patent? Was that running out?
Well, and that's what I kind of find out in some of my investigations. There's a theory out there, and a very plausible theory, and some factual data that's been reported on by the FTC. But essentially, drug manufacturers, they take you know they protect their proprietary product with their patents, and they can make more money on their product if it's patented. I mean, that's standard business in America, of course. And as they're manufacturing these drugs and they start getting away from these patents, that opens them up for generics to be made as the patents expire. What we have seen as a practice, as the patents get close to their end, and you got to realize that patents aren't a let's do this today and it applies tomorrow. They're a long process, go for 7 to 10 years. It takes a long time to get your patent. So Advair was about 2 years away from a patent expiring. We do know that to be factual. So what happens is, to continue the profit game, if you want to say, from the PBMs and all that stuff, they have to look at other alternatives to Advair that have, per se, better profitability, and things with longer patents have better profitability. So
Right.
it's more protected. There's less generics. We can sell it for more. And what'll happen is they'll phase out drugs that are coming close to their patent expiration, and they'll bring in replacements. And actually, when we talk about the kickbacks, the rebates, they'll give more rebates on the new drug to get people, get the PBMs to get people switched over. So then they can phase out the other drug as the patent expires, and potentially in the past it would go to an over-the-counter type medication. That's how some over-the-counter medications happen.
But
But
this dizzying maze,
oh,
it's also if the drug makers are having to pay the insurance company more rebates, well, the government is giving the drug makers all this money for research and development and all this other stuff. So really, essentially, it's the government just giving free money to the drug makers, which then go to the insurance companies.
To an absolute extent. I mean, like, making drugs is not expensive. It's not cheap. There's no fact.
Right.
There's, we want to be state of the art in our country. We want the best healthcare. That's a fact. So these drug makers got a task at hand, we'll just say, with a lot of regulation, and for good cause. We don't want them to make something that kills somebody,
Right.
But the PBMs, as the middlemen, learned how to exploit that. And
right.
there were a couple times in history that we can talk about that kind of really set this in motion. But like this is legal RICO.
Well, yeah, what you're describing, I mean, kind of sounds like an episode of The Sopranos to me, just in the medical.
Oh my good, that's exactly. I mean, as we discuss later, there's a lot about it, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. And it's like a mafia organization. That's a fact.
Right.
They mafia-like tactics.
And getting back to your son, bottom line, if he would have had the Advair, whatever flare-up he had, most likely would have been under control, and he's still here.
Yeah, the reality is the Advair was his maintenance medicine. You take it every day, you don't have asthma attacks. If you happen to have one, grab your rescue inhaler, take a couple puffs, and you'll probably be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's the general theory of it. When you're on this, I mean, I can tell you personally, Advair is awesome. It's the best thing I've ever used myself, and the best thing my son used, and millions of people use it every day. Keeps you in control.
I want to play this clip. This is from Congressman Jake Auchincloss. Auchincloss, thanks.
Yep.
He spoke about your son on the floor of the House last year. Let's take a look.
These pharmacy benefit managers are the middlemen of drug pricing, owned by Fortune 20 health insurance companies and working for profit, not for patients. PBMs claim to negotiate on behalf of employers and patients to lower drug costs, but the Federal Trade Commission's July investigation into PBM price gouging abuses showed the facts. PBMs mark up the cost of drugs by thousands of percent above their acquisition costs and have captured $300 billion from the U.S. healthcare system and invest none of that into research and development for new drugs. They influence what prescription drugs are available and what they cost by mandating patients receive expensive brand name drugs when cheaper generic drugs are prescribed and readily available. And now their greed is on full display. At the July House Oversight Committee hearing, I questioned Big Three PBM executives about these markups. I asked CVS Caremark President David Joyner, now CEO of CVS Health, why he was charging $6,229 for a $16 multiple sclerosis drug. This is a 38,000% markup for life-saving medication, and he had no real answer to my questions. It doesn't stop there. These exorbitant markups extend to drugs for leukemia, prostate cancer, kidney disease, and more.
So a couple things there. Just to break this down, he's mentioning PBMs, but this is United Healthcare. They own Optum RX. So these PBMs, yes, they are the middleman, but at the core, the folks making the decisions are a subsidiary for United Health.
Well, yeah, when you look at it, there's three major PBMs in this country that control, as you hear it, over 80% of all business. And it's vertical integration from the top end of United Health Group, for example, down to United Healthcare, UMR, which is another division of all the healthcare stuff. And then they have their own pharmacy per se, and that's Optum RX. And CVS and Express Scripts, they all have their own form of all of that. All three are the problem out there, as they control 80% of the business, and they have the government contracts from the Affordable Care Act. They basically were awarded all that stuff where they get the government's business for all the government subsidized programs, if you want to say, out there, or assistance programs for healthcare.
Yeah,
but three people,
I think companies like United and elsewhere, part of why in addition to creating ungodly sums of money, part of why they create these things is to take the focus off of them because, well, it's not us, it's the PBM, but it is them. I mean, they're,
Yes.
they, United Health and the other parent companies just create these unnecessary middlemen, which then become a third middleman. And before you know it, you have a dizzying maze. But something he mentioned here, which you've advocated for, was this bill, the Fight Back Act. And we spoke before this. While this was under consideration, you obviously and others were lobbying for this. Tell us what this act would do, how something like this could actually have prevented what your son did. And it seems like some interesting things happened while that bill was being discussed. You had potential interest from CNN in covering it, and then that interest kind of disappeared.
So the reality is the Pharmacists Fight Back Act that Representative Auchinclaw was talking about in that speech, that is a pretty powerful PBM reform bill. It'll stop the steering, which makes forcing people to mail order. It'll stop the price gouging that he talked about. It'll also make reimbursement for pharmacies fair and equal. I mean, because that's the one other big, like I said, we have a lot of layers here and it all goes one after another. Pharmacies are closing at a rate of like 5 to 8 places a day. And that's like your independent pharmacies, not your chain pharmacies. These are the mom and pops out there. They're being under reimbursed for the prescriptions they provide to me, you, whoever, which thus they close their doors because they can't sustain. Right. And that's one thing that bill would also really stop. The uniqueness of that bill was as it was introduced and brought to the public, there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. The Federal Trade Commission, as you referenced, the Department of Justice looking at stuff, House oversight committees talking to the David Joyner and all these people from United and CV and all the big companies, like under oath where they lied. I mean, but either way, this bill was formed kind of off those investigations and these hearings and stuff like that. When it came out, it was built to address those specific things that are affecting America right now. There's other PBM reform bills out there also. And, they all have so many specific angles they have to go at because of this complexity of webs that that the PBMs have built over the years. But interestingly enough, in the continuing resolution or the end of the year, the lame duck session. Okay, so there were 2 bills, a Medicaid bill and a lower cost and transparency type bill that have been kind of going for PBM reform. They've kind of been going through the loop and the ringer and everything for the last couple of years. They were making their laps. Well, then here comes HR 9096, and that gained tremendous momentum. We had 50 co-sponsors by Thanksgiving, and it was just released like a couple months before that. Like we worked hard to get bipartisan support co-sponsors. Doesn't matter if you're red or blue or purple. We all need this. Okay. Well, as my advocacy has been going on, I've been doing some media stuff, some PSAs, whatever. Well, I got reached out to by CNN. I don't know what the person's title was, but the coordinator for the Jake Tapper show. I got an urgent call saying, we need you on the show tonight. Can you do this?
And this must have been somewhat recently if it was during the lame duck?
That was the day before the continuing resolution vote, actually. So I got to think about what that date was. I can look and see on my notes here, but
November, December.
Yeah. It just in like the lame duck session in December, like the last vote, like the days before the last couple of votes. Got it. Actually, there was a school shooting in Wisconsin right around that time too. If that puts some correlation.
In Madison.
ACLS. Literally the night before that happened. But
so you get a call from producer or whomever, probably a guest booker, saying we want you on tonight.
Yeah, we want you on tonight. Okay, so that text starts in the morning. I got a text, and we started talking, whatever. Throughout the day, they needed HIPAA forms so they could get information from Optum RX and all this kind of stuff. Well, we're providing all that. We're getting prepped and ready to be on for the show.
They need HIPAA forms so they could get information about your son.
Yes, correct. Yeah, with the Healthcare Privacy Act. So, like, we've obviously got very well experienced in all that stuff, unfortunately. So, providing the proper HIPAA forms so they can go ask questions to Cole's PBM, Optum RX, about what happened to Cole and why did this happen. Well, This is not the first time that we've had to do this and got a response out of OptumRx, but conveniently this time, I get a call about 20 minutes before I'm supposed to go live, and I'm told, "Oh, it's not going to happen tonight. It'll be tomorrow," from the producer on the Jake Tapper show. I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Well, what's the holdup?" I mean, just kind of asking. We got a little personal, and she said, "Well, OptumRx won't respond to our request." Oh, okay. And the lawyers don't want us to move forward at CNN until we have both sides of the story. Fair enough. Okay.
She said the lawyers didn't want us
Yeah,
to move
yeah. The
forward.
lawyers, yeah, the lawyers wanted to make sure that we had an accurate depiction between everything before we go out there and share Cole's story, if you want to say.
And just so you know, journalistically, if the lawyers was what she said, I don't know this person. Maybe that was the truth. I mean, legally, your only duty is to reach out to Optum.
Hmm.
I mean, you won't be, there's no crime if you don't, but journalistically, you could be sued if you don't. And CNN had reached out, they just didn't respond, which most of the time you would say Optum didn't respond. So interesting that they said they used that legally, inferring we need both sides. Go ahead.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Well, long and short of it, the next day came and went, and communication, and they aren't responding. That's when they were starting to finalize the votes for the final year lame duck session. And I was really hoping to get my opportunity to get out there and speak with the lead or with Jake Tapper, just to help get Cole's story out there to maybe sway some legislators to really prove the intent of our seriousness of how we need help. But I never got a call back. I mean, I was told it's not happening, and then there was just, I mean, just little mini excuses, and really she was out of the loop a little bit, just being told it's not happening. Well, then she went on vacation, and I finally sent a text message and just said, "Is this ever going to happen?" And basically, she said, "At this point, it looks like it's just never going to happen." Long and short of it. I mean, like, they just
Yeah.
did not do it, and left bygones to be bygones. They wouldn't give any more information. I find it very suspect, very, very suspect, as I've done some other media interviews without comments from, our PBM OptumRx before. And the
Hmm.
interviews have moved on, and it was, well, OptumRx had no comment, or something like that.
Right.
I have no factual proof, but it's very suspect that, this big vote's going on at our nation's capital, and this media outlet.
Well, I also think timing wise, it does seem that this would have happened after the murder of Brian Thompson, the United
Yep.
Healthcare CEO,
Yep.
which was obviously big in the news on CNN and elsewhere. Obviously, the outcry against United Healthcare. CNN gets commercial revenue from companies like United Healthcare and Pfizer and et cetera. So we can only speculate, but legally, CNN was covered. They reached out to Optum, and Optum wouldn't answer, which is all they had to do. So it does seem quite interesting, and viewers could surmise why CNN killed the story because legally there was no reason to.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I have no ill will against any media outlet. I'm not here to play
Yeah.
politics, and that's why I like your guys' organization. You appear to just spit the truth, and that's kind of nice, and I like that. So,
Well, they're all corrupt, sadly.
oh
Red,
God,
blue, doesn't matter.
yeah,
Um, Getting back to your son, I want sorry to
yeah, yeah, no,
get
no, no,
personal.
no.
Sorry to get personal here, but this was not a quick loss. He
Well,
was
yeah,
still with us for several days after being hospitalized. Can you kind of describe that process?
yeah, yeah. So back to the night of the 15th of January. So we get that call. We get a call from the emergency room doctor that said your son is in the emergency room. We've just resuscitated him. You need to get up to the hospital. That's not good, essentially. So my wife, my other Dane's or Cole's brother, we jumped in the vehicle and started our trek. Regularly, like I said, usually a 2-hour drive. It was about 4 hours. We had a bad ice storm. It was 22 below that night. We get to Appleton, Wisconsin, at the Appleton Medical Center about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we see something that we never were prepared for in our whole life. Our firstborn child is laying in the ICU with tubes sticking out of his body. He's in a coma, medically induced. Um, It's just it's insane. It's insane. Like a father and a mother's worst nightmare, plain and simple. And it was our firstborn child. I mean, like my boy, my wife's boy, and whatever. So that started about a 6-day voyage of neurologists and CT scans and ups and downs and whichever. About midway through, about 3 days into it, we found out a couple things. One, Cole was without oxygen to his brain too much, and it damaged his brain. He could not function unless he might have been on a ventilator, and that was about the worst news we could ever have. He would never have. He was never going to wake up. Never again. We wouldn't hear his voice, and that's what we were told. I remember that day very specifically. I fell to my knee. I collapsed on top of him. My wife was across the room. The neurologist is standing there. They slid chairs behind us, and I just remember collapsing. And I couldn't leave his side. My wife couldn't leave his side. We knew that we had precious days left with Cole, and we made sure that we could be there with him for everything. We learned that he was a organ donor, which we were proud of him for doing that. We don't, we of course, push our children, but we let them be their own people. And he chose organ donation, and that started a whole nother process and actually delayed things a little bit because, for a good reason, we needed to keep him alive to maintain his organs till we could find people around the country that could benefit from his organs. And long and short of it, he did donate his organs. He didn't go the perfect way of donation, but he still helped 75 people with his organ donation, which is pretty nice and
Yeah.
honorable, But it allowed my wife and I, prior to the donation, to be with him in his last final moments. And my wife, my son, and I were very close to the last second that he was alive. I had my head on his chest, holding his hand. To his very last breath. And that put a drive in me that where I'm at today. I mean, like, you want some motivation. You want some motivation. Your firstborn child is gone and you just felt his last breath. And that's what happened to me and my family. And long and short of it, a couple days after, we're trying to reel in, and me and my wife, we had our clarity moment of, is this our world? Is our other son okay? He was 17. I mean, yeah, a young adult, but just saw his older brother die. And the biggest thing me and my wife said was this just can't be happening, of course, but this just can't happen again. Nobody else needs to die. We need, I mean, like that statement between my wife and I is like what we're trying to rebuild our lives on, and live with that in honor of Cole. One unique thing about Cole, he stood up for the little guy. He really did. And Cole, in this case, became the little guy. And at his time of need, there was nobody there to help him. And we are here now. To this last breath, like I said, we got there as soon as we could help him and knew there was a problem. And now we'll get justice for Cole. We're going to stop the greed, the tactics of the PBMs, and really believe and live that this can't happen to anybody else in America. No one else needs to die. And that
Right.
set off a plethora of activity on, we call it the PBM reform mission. And that's what my life has been for the last year, and it's not slowing down.
Can you tell us a little bit more about him? What
Yeah,
was he like? What was his personality like?
so Cole was a quirky kid. He loved the game. He had the most random facts. You wanted to know something random, he'd tell you. My wife and I have reminisced about this many times. I mean, second grade, my wife was dropping him off. Excuse me, first grade, like a little kindergarten school. So my wife's dropping him off on his first day. She was telling the story. She's in tears. Her little baby's going to school for the first time. And Cole looked at her and goes, "Mama, I got this. You don't worry about it." jumped out the car and walked in. I mean, like just Mr. Independent. I mean, we were spoiled parents on Saturday mornings. Cole would watch Roly Poly Oly or something like that on his little TV in his toy room. But before he'd do that, we'd set a dish of mandarin oranges, some juice in the fridge, and on Saturday mornings he'd watch little cartoons, get his own mandarin oranges, drink his juice, and we'd get till like 8:30 in the morning if we wanted to sleep in. I mean, but that was Cole. He was very independent, very no one thought like him, and he would not hold back on his opinion. I mean, like, and just a kind person. Like he had a tattoo on his arm. It was a smiley face. We all have them in our family now. I don't know. I don't know. I want to try to show it here if I can. I don't know if I can. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's
Whatever.
okay.
It's a
That's
little
okay.
smiley face. It's 2 dots and a smile. And he got that on a vacation in Florida. That he drove down there, met us at another vacation place, and brought one of his best friends down, and they snuck out and got this little tattoo. And what it stands for is just be happy. Nothing more, nothing less. And that was Cole's outlook. Just be happy. And
Right.
it's hard. It's freaking hard this last year. But when me and my wife both have our tattoos, a lot of our family members have it. And when we need it, that little burst, I know I'm not a tattoo person. I'm not against them. I've just never did tattoos, but I got my first one and it's for my son. And boy, did it hurt. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was an honor to put it on my body. And now it reminds me, just be happy where I can.
And I'd like to ask, because you're in Wisconsin, it's not terribly far from Canada. I
Mhm.
mean, as your world has become this, does it make sense to you why this country has 10 different layers and, PBMs and, subsidiaries, and one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing, and you have to go through this bureaucratic maze where, frankly, I don't know, if your son was a little more north, probably still be with us.
Possibly, yes. Possibly, yes. And each environment brings on its challenges. There's no doubt. What's better here could not work there, and vice versa, possibly. But given off like what you're saying, there's a possibility he would have had better access if he would have been north. That's a possibility, yes. you know and you hear stories about that. Not that we are world travelers. We do like one trip a year. We were fortunate to go to Mexico and take the boys from a young age due to Cole's grandparents having a place that we could use and things like that. And we see a lot of Canadians that come down there, and they actually get their medical care down in Mexico because they're on waiting lists in Canada to get this done. So it's like it's just messed up.
Another element of this, yes, you're absolutely right, particularly for specialist care. I've talked to Canadians who have said they have to wait, sometimes months, 6 months. But in this case, if your son or anyone, let's say, went down that bureaucratic maze and would have picked up the phone, this and that, perhaps there were things he could have done to eventually get it approved. But that could take weeks in its own. Calling Optum and then having to call this and, we'll get back to you. And then there's a holiday storm, so that delays the response. And before you know it, it's 3 weeks till you can get an answer, but asthma doesn't wait. So for him, even if he would have, taken measures to get it approved, it probably would have been too late.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, like this was 5 days after he got denied his medicine with a weekend in there. And the first night was like 6 o'clock at night. So really about 3 days worth of stuff. And, as the formulary was written, and the exclusions of the generic, no generic on the formulary available. Though if he would have had to take another step, he would have been forced to another medicine that he had to get a prior authorization on it, do a step process. And then once he would have failed on that, then he could have maybe had a path to the generic medicine. But the reality is that night at the pharmacy, it was $539, take it or leave it. And he chose rent and walked out that door. I actually, for my Advair, had to go through that process. It took several hours. I was fortunate that I had a pharmacist at an independent pharmacy who kind of explained a little bit actually called out Cole's story and said, "Hey, I think I know what happened to your son because you're trying to fill yours, and I have to, as a pharmacist, I have to do steps 1, 2, 3 to get something going for you, and I'll do that." And then once that happened, that was I didn't sit idle after my son's death. I heard that. I started making phone calls to Optum. Within about 2 hours, I had my generic Advair. I'll be really honest. After getting extremely vicious on the phone, and not when I say vicious, but yeah, it was vicious just because I'm not going to risk my life after I've already lost my sons and know these games they're playing. I mean, essentially, they were taking the best option of the generic medicine and putting it on the formulary in a position you can't get to it unless you scream and yell and whatever. And then in the middle of it, the drug that my pharmacist got approved, the one that replaced the Advair, if you want to say, number one, it didn't meet the dosage level for me. And even if Cole would have got it, it wouldn't have been the dosage level. Like the Advair compared to that, there was less milligrams of medicine. Okay. And I found out, and this is part of the problem, the pharmacy, when they sold that to me, they lost money on it.
Hmm.
They lost money. So they sold something, purchased it from a warehouse, paid their cost, and sold it to me for my step process, and they lost money. I mean, that doesn't make sense either. That's another
Right.
layer of the everything. And
Yeah.
but to put the emphasis on the independent pharmacy versus the chain pharmacy Cole went to, um, that pharmacist at the independent took it upon herself to stay late, make extra phone calls, all knowing she was going to lose money when she prescribed this to me. Because back to the basics of a pharmacist, they're like a doctor, kind of in that same realm, lots of school and love taking care of people. She couldn't, in her good conscience, not do something.
Right.
And so and that's why it's so scary that pharmacies are closing at such an alarming rate because of that under reimbursement also.
It goes from duty to care
Yep.
to duty to cha-ching.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically what our for-profit health care
Yeah.
system
Well,
has become.
I can say very wholeheartedly that, in my opinion, Optum RX is putting profit over patients wholeheartedly. The United Health Group is doing that, and so are the other
Yeah.
top PBMs for sure. I can
Speaking
say,
of, let me
go ahead.
let me play this clip. This was United Health Group CEO Andrew Whitty, who made about $23 million a year or two ago, responding after Brian Thompson's murder. Obviously, he had pleasant things to say about Thompson, but he said some things about what he feels that their role is. I'd love your thoughts.
And there are very few people in the history of the US healthcare industry who had a bigger positive effect on American healthcare than Brian. And we are going to make sure that we not only acknowledge and honor that legacy of Brian, but we will continue it. Our role is a critical role, and we make sure that care is safe, appropriate, and is delivered when people need it. And we guard against the pressures that exist for unsafe care or for unnecessary care to be delivered in a way which makes the whole system too complex and ultimately unsustainable.
Now, if Andrew Whitty ever responded, I'm sure their response would be, you have to ask Optum, and they would, keep a distance to it. But he said to provide care when people need it. Well, there's millions of people with severe asthma that is under control with drugs like Advair, but if they don't have it, it could go south real quick, which is what happened with your son. What are your thoughts? They're the guardians of what is, quote,
everything in that interview I could dissect. I mean, beyond belief. The reality is that, they're there to provide the health care and the unnecessary health care, medical treatments, to keep that in check, as he's saying on his messaging. That couldn't be further from the truth. Are they affecting healthcare? 100%. 100%. I know that video you just showed there, and I know somebody who also made some comments on that and brought up a very specific point from a former United Healthcare owned doctor. And the reality is, as Andrew Whitty's saying now, they're the guardians of the galaxy are doing what they're doing. Yeah, what they do is they bilk the government systems and pre-diagnose people potentially, and make all this money and bilk the American people through this. And then they deny everything else, saying it's not medically necessary. And then you get to the appeals process and you go after it, and you get people like me, or people like there's this place called the Arthritis Center down in Missouri. They have a team of people who do nothing but battle these insurance companies, and there's many other people out there that do it. I mean, like, insanely. And you might take a month or two, and then you finally get it approved. But the path from start to finish, it is different every time. It is challenging every time. You get a lot of the runaround games. Oh, you didn't fax this in, or we don't have it. You'll talk to somebody who'll say, yeah, we got it, we're working on it. And then you hear nothing. You call back and you have to start all over again. I mean, like, it is set up to keep you confused. So his clear message is, I mean, is crap. It's crap. I mean, like, he may think it's that, but it's definitely not. And if he's not, he needs to get in the field and understand. Like, that's the
Right.
reality of it. He has lost touch with reality. Now,
Mhm.
I assume at his level, he may only hear about the profits that they're making and their commitment to profiting to their shareholders or their investors. So maybe he's kind of stuck up there and trying to trust his team a little bit, but bullshit. You're the boss. I'm the
Right.
boss of something. And I tell you what, my owner, if we're not hitting our business plan, has questions for me. And I
Mm.
don't turn the lights on in the building. I don't really go out and see all the customers per se, or do whatever, but I'm ultimately responsible. And when we don't make money, I take the heat in my world. And I cannot believe it's not the same way at United Healthcare. And these guys are just in a cloud of freaking, I don't know. It's just they're in their own cloud, their own world. And his statements are all bullshit. Excuse my language. Bull crap.
Yeah.
Bull crap.
Pure speculation, but I think potentially one of the reasons CNN chose not to have you on is they didn't want to promote the following through your advocacy through this tragedy. You've been working on with others a documentary series on. We talked about it before. This sure sounds like the mafia, and it's
Yes.
called The Modern Medical Mafia, and it's coming out soon, January 21st. Tell us more about The Modern Medical Mafia and how people could see this when it comes out and what it is.
Yeah. So this is a docu-series. It was going to be a movie called The Modern Medical Mafia. That was the plan for this. And our producers at Patient Protector, which is our main website that I co-founded. So we've got some producers there that are anonymous under fear of retribution from the people we're making the movie about. Hence the name Modern Medical Mafia. The reality of this docu-series that it turned into, we have hundreds and hundreds of personal stories from around America that we now are compiling together to include FTC, DOJ, senators, independent pharmacists, more patients like me, families with our stories. And with 12,000 physical miles driven around America, getting these little clips and videos and what our producers put together, we couldn't make a movie. We had to make a series. And even at that, the docu-series, we're looking from an hour to an hour and a half per episode. We got enough to probably do 40 episodes, believe it or not. We're going to start with a smaller series on the 21st of January this year. That's the 1-year anniversary of Cole's death. And we'll release it on Amazon at this point. We're trying to get more places out there. We want to make it free. We're not here to make money. That's not our goal. And it'll be on Amazon. It'll be on modernmedicalmafia.com's YouTube channels or any place like that. But the unique thing, if you want, this Friday, January 10th, we're actually having a pre-release event for the Modern Medical Mafia in Wisconsin. We've got some media coverage. We got big people, and we're going to talk about the story of all the patients and all that good stuff. And then we're going to preview a little bit of the docu-series that night. It'll be streamed. If you go to the modernmedicalmafia.com website, you can sign up to get on the wait list for that. It'll, one, give you a link for the streaming event, which starts at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on July 10th. I can send you a link to if you want to.
January 10th, right?
Yeah, January 10th. Excuse me, this Friday, 3 days from now, and that'll be streamed, of course. But then on January 21st, that's when the big movie's coming out. This movie, plain and simple, is going to blow the lid off the industry. Like, there are things in there, and I know I mentioned something yesterday. I'm not going to say that today because I don't want to take the funk on it, but there's stuff in there that I've never heard of before that are happening. And I've heard the statement and what it is. It's insane. Like, people don't even know this stuff is existing elsewhere. And what they found under every rock and everywhere they went, to Louisiana, to Florida, to Wisconsin, Texas, wherever, they were everywhere. People want to talk. There's a lot of fear mongering by the PBMs because of the chargebacks that they can put through the contractual agreements to any pharmacist who speaks against them. And they have done it. I know a pharmacist owner who took a $600,000 hit after he took a run at the PBMs. And the reality is that's what they do. I know pharmacists out there that are cooperating that have very close protection from organizations they're working with because of the fear of the PBMs. And this movie will expose it all. It's going to educate you. It's going to enrage you. And we're going to help you know how to engage. And that's the combination of our movie or the docuseries and our website, patientprotector.us. Those two areas, you can get to the movie on either of them, but the Modern Medical Mafia, our biggest thing is we want 1 million people on this wait list. We want 1 million people to watch it. We can use it like a grassroots petition if we wanted to, because we can say we got 1 million people that signed up to watch this movie. We got 1 million views watching this movie, and all these people, they want PBM reform. That's a powerful message. I don't have $500 billion laying around. I don't think you do. I don't think our viewers do. Most small countries don't have that kind of money. The top 3 PBMs get it every year from us. And we have to use our voices, our social medias, our whatever we can do to get around this. And it's a powerful force with lots of influence, and it's draining. It's hurting people as we do this, as far as they're continuing to get this bad treatment. The overcharging, the 38,000% medicine markup. I mean, are you kidding me? And Representative Auchincloss has a couple other videos about that out there. That's not the sole case. He, as he says, he could go on and on. I have my son's story, my personal story. I've worked with a lot of behind the scenes industry experts. I mean, like, this resonates with everybody, plain and simple. I could tell you this right now. Take 10 people, ask them if they've ever been to a doctor, had their little yearly visit, and before you see your doctor, generally that nurse is in there going, let's review your medicines and blah, 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 blah. And you still taking this? Aren't you taking this? And what pharmacy do you want that sent to? She says, okay, or he or she says. And you see the doctor, you're good to go. You cough, turn your head and cough, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I'll send those all to your pharmacy for the refills you need. Now, here's the point that I'm getting at. How many people have walked into that pharmacy and been told, like Cole, well, you can't have this one. You got to actually try this one first, or do something different. They don't know. We as consumers may not know what that is, but that's called the step process. The PBMs claim it's to give you an option to get better priced medicine for the same equal care, is what they're saying. That's what that's supposed to equal. And what it means is you got to try this till you fail, and then you can have what your doctor said you can have. Now, the problem with that is, yes, we want a better deal. I want generic over name brand if it's available. Yes, that's a fact, and I would appreciate that. But just offer the generic first and skip the step process. Because to get in the step process, it brings in prior authorizations. It has quantity limits. And the true reality is the way the PBMs are using their kickbacks, you're not getting the cheapest medicine. Your copay might be the same. Your premiums every month might be fairly reasonable with a stupid deductible, of course, but long and short of it, they're making more money because that's placed on their formulary. And to get placed on their formulary, someone has to pay bribe money to get it there, kickback money to get it there. And that's the drug manufacturer. So you're only going to see it if the drug manufacturer puts up extra cash for the PBMs to have to sell you that medicine. And in that step process, I'll bet you 5 out of 10 people have probably had that situation happen. And that's your grandma, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your wife, your son. List goes on, just like Jake Auchincloss. The list goes on and on as the overcharging goes. I mean, and like I said, we have barely even scratched the surface on a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's the mail order side of things. I mean, like we could just go on and on for hours on that. You know, there's one person out there. Her son has had a transplant in his life. He takes medicine every 12 hours. She's currently battling being forced to mail order pharmacy from her local pharmacy after already proving to them that the last time she was forced to do this, the medicine was getting tainted and contaminated upon shipping in due to heat and weather exposure. She got a call one day, plain and simple, after a little checkup with her. I think he was 10 at that time. Maybe he's 12 now. I might be a little off on the dates, but either way, gets a call from the doctor after a routine checkup. You need to get him here now. He's going into rejection. And she's like, how is this happening? We take our medicine every 12 hours. We do this. We do this. Well, that started a whole world for her. She's got a heat thermal gun and blah, blah, blah. And she's been proving that when you ship this medicine at your warehouse at a online retail pharmacy that you're driven or steered to, which the 3 top CEOs said their companies don't steer under oath, by the way. That was on the congressional hearing. They lied to Congress, hence the charges. But they steer her to go to a mail order option that has proven to been contaminated from weather type environments, which caused her son to go into rejection. She battled it once, beat it. Now she's battling it again because she's got a different PBM. That's just another crazy one out there. There's another lady in our documentary. She lost her son because he couldn't afford his insulin. Plain and simple. He was rationing and stockpiling, and and that's a big thing that happens too. People stockpile because they can't afford their medicine, so they try saving it up. Cole was guilty of that a little bit. I was guilty of that a little bit. Just because it's expensive, to keep going and doing this, and whatever. And I mean, in the past, I say we're guilty of that kind of stuff. Like I have seen it happen before. Maybe I didn't take my Advair twice today, like prescribed, so I get an extra puff, but there's people with like insulin that are just not taking the full dosage or the 2 dosages so they can make it last. Because I know the clip you played was for not insulin. It was something else from Representative Auchincloss, but he has the same one for insulin, and it was $35. And it got really interesting. I think the first time he told the CEO of CVS, basically told him, quit marking this up like this at the $3,400 sell point of $60 or $35 acquisition. They actually raised it even higher to like $6,000 after they were called out and said,
Unbelievable.
It's like they're that blatant, that bold. They have their protections that have been instituted by Congress in a good faith effort too. I'm not saying that we set this all up and it was bullshit, or it was, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, that it was a bad business decision. It turned into a rotten onion, layer after layer. I mean, with the authorization of kickbacks. I mean, like they are the only big organization that can legally take kickbacks from their preference to put medicine on. That's the PBMs.
My last question, even though you're trying in a good faith effort, lobbying Congress, I mean, the reality is most of these Congress people are taking money from these companies or their subsidiaries. How do we, the American people, put an end to this honestly legalized bribery scheme to get whatever people's preferences are. Some people want Medicare for all, some people want a public option. But how do you even begin when they've created the system to be so complicated to basically make people feel impossible to change it?
So simplicity on that, there is none. But we have to systematically get these PBM reform bills passed. So yes, there are politicians influenced by PBM money, 100%. It's the way of the lobbying of the America. There's another problem. I can, like I said, that's just another massive problem. We're falling into it. And they actually, like I said, have more money than most small countries. So they got a lot of money to go after it. Every little chip of the block against Goliath, if you want to say, is going to start bringing what we need.
Thank you for taking the time. I wish you and your wife and other son didn't have to go through this, but Cole was very lucky to have someone like you who now has taken up a life mission to bring him justice. So everybody, I'll put in the links to the Modern Medical Mafia, also your social medias, and we'll definitely have to stay in touch to see how this develops.
Yeah, and I'm going to take this pitch at Angry Dad Wisconsin, any platform, TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. I'm not a social influencer. I have just started everything August 1st of this year. So not the best at it. There's a lot of simpler stuff out there. Like, follow, subscribe. But biggest thing, go to modernmedicalmafia.com. Get on the wait list for the movie, the docuseries, because I'm going to tell you this. We're going to do our first iteration on Amazon. Remember how I said we have enough for many, many episodes? We will continue this, and we want everybody in America to know about this so you can all help us get justice for everybody.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
Thank you.